All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. To my regular listeners, you already know how I get down. You know, it's the number one show on innovative teamwork for a reason, because we bring people nothing but the best. Today, I have an individual. His name is Drewbie Wilson, who is going to be, if you were not fired up about sales before today, you definitely will be fired up about sales after this episode. And as it's like, I know, Drewbie, I was thinking about the best way to intro you. And I mean, so many different thoughts came to my head, but the one thing that kept ringing is like that Jay-Z line. I'm a hustler, sell ice in the water, I sell fire in hell. I am a hustler, baby. I will sell water to a well. The man has sold everything you can possibly imagine from birth to now. And he has a brand now called Call the Damn Leads, which is exactly as it sounds. So with all that, Drewbie, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much, Oswan. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I'll go with I love the Jay-Z quote, but my personal favorite is I'm not a businessman, I'm a business man. And we can go deep on that, but I think, when you're talking about leadership, uh, that's a guy that shows up as the example. And if you're going to be a leader in your business for your team, or even just in your own personal life for your community, you got to show up as the example. So I'm excited to be here with you guys today. I'm excited and grateful for those of you that are tuned in and listening to this, because you're going to hear from me a lot, but time is your most valuable asset. So if you're investing a little bit with us today, truly means the world to me.
Yes, that I'm a huge fan of that line as well, because let's just break it down real quick for the listeners. Not a businessman. I'm the business. This what I do. Who you're about. You're the businessman. I was actually thinking about quoting that one as well. But regardless, if we start talking about Jay-Z, we'll be on here for in terms of all the sales advice that I've gotten from him as well. But let's start with you, man, because like Jay-Z, you are very, very transparent in your story. You used to sell things that were not legal. You did it illegally. You did whatever it is you had to do to survive. And I always have an admiration for folks like that, because there's no excuses. You have your situation and you work your way to get out of it. So talk a little bit about your background and what, possessed you to want to be productive in that essence, and just going out and creating your own opportunities. So the floor is yours, man.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's funny, I've had a lot of conversations with entrepreneurs and business owners and sales professionals. I mean, I've been consulting for just over a decade now. I've been in sales, like you said, my whole life. I grew up in the streets. And funny enough, drug dealers, dope boys, we end up being some of the greatest sales professionals because we understand the hustle, we understand the grind. And it's funny when you look back at it and you realize, like, hey, when you have a product that's in demand, you're not really a salesman, you're a servant. You just show up, you serve the goods, you got the products, you're serving the customers, but like they know what they want, they came to get it. And so you're kind of more of an order taker at that point, which is weird. People don't want to necessarily admit that, but the truth is you have something they want, so they're going to come and get it no matter what. The
Right.
real hustlers are the ones that learned how to build something bigger than just the game, right? They understood how to build the networking. They understand how to do the marketing, and the sales aspect of it is just a byproduct of all the other pieces that go along with showing up and
Mhm.
being the example of what's possible, right? Because when you're selling, you're serving. And the funny thing is, as I grew up and got older, I was selling anything I could get my hands on, right? But I got, met a cute girl,
Mhm.
got married, ended up having a baby,
Right.
realized, what? I don't want to be dead or in prison, because I obviously, and the fast money don't last, because
Right.
you've met a lot of, hustlers that make money, but then they lose it just as quickly because they're constantly chasing that dopamine high, that rush, just like an addict would. They're just addicted to something different.
Mhm.
And so for me, when I got into legitimate sales, I started realizing, I do have a knack for this. I'm good at connecting with people. I can help them relate their situation to the product or service that I'm trying to provide. And so it's allowed me to create a pretty amazing life. And over the years, had some wins, had some losses, had some things that I have, can look back on and say, great. Now that I have that experience and I have the wisdom, I can make better choices going forward. And ultimately, that's what's great about this profession, is that whether you're, a solo sales guy and you just go out and you crush it every single day and like that's your game, or you decide you want to transition into leadership and saying, you know what, this is cool, but the feeling I get closing a deal is not the same feeling I get as helping someone else learn the game and go and close a deal.
Mhm.
And so that to me is where I kind of made that transition of like, you know what? I like helping people. I like closing, don't get me wrong, but I also like helping people. And I made that shift recently of saying, I'm going to go in and really just focus on helping people understand that it doesn't matter what you sell, where you're selling it. If you can focus on the service behind it and how you help people, I can help you be successful and create an amazing life.
Okay, so you said a lot of great things, and I want to make sure we don't just brush over a lot of the gems you just dropped there because it's important, like you just said, and you actually just taught me something in regards to what you were, when you first started. Selling is actually serving, right? You're actually serving people, and in many ways, when you do it young, you start young, you don't know that, sir, you don't really dive into what serving actually is. You're just giving the people what they want. So if you're selling dope to someone, you're not thinking about the long-term effects that it may have on your community or anything like that. So if you stay in that place, and that's the big takeaway that I want to really make sure people understand is no one's telling you you're doing anything wrong by being productive and wanting to make money for yourself. That's what you should want. However, if you stay in the place where you're constantly pushing stuff that you know is not going to serve your community, that's when it becomes wrong. And I love the fact that you mentioned she's currently your wife now, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So
Thankfully, she almost wasn't there. We'll get to that story, but like she's still my wife to this day,
yeah,
and I'm
that
very
look,
grateful for
because that's
it.
why I think it's so important to bring around the right people, the right network, the right people around you, so they can see the potential in you. They could see the things in you to say, look, this person, I get he's rough around the edges, but I love his heart. I love what he's doing. If I can legitimize, if I can be somebody in his life that makes it so you take that same vigor, that same grind, that same hustle, and let's apply it to insurance. Let's apply it to something that's productive. Then we get a whole lot of people out there that are realizing, hey, the skills that I'm getting in the quote unquote streets or the quote unquote rough neighborhoods, I can apply those same skills to the corporate world. So can you just kind of speak on, I guess, her influencing you? Because I believe you said it was her father-in-law or something that hooked you up with the first insurance agency and stuff like that. Just kind of speak a little bit on her
Yeah,
influence and
absolutely,
how
man.
things just kind
You
of.
know, when I met my wife Kayla originally, I
Mhm.
was her dealer. Like I was the guy. Like she called me and we got together and we that was our life back then.
Right.
But she had a desire to have more out of life, and I was just the lucky son of a gun that she thought was like kind of cute, even though at the time I was a little bit goofy and real rough around the edges. But
Right.
I mean, the greatest sculptors always start with a pretty rough lump of clay before they create beauty, right? And so
And we're gonna
my wife,
actually on that note, we're gonna get into your weight loss journey as well, the two-time weight loss journey. So we will get there.
hell
So
yeah, no, yeah, we got, man, we could do this all day. I've had a pretty amazing life, and I'm grateful that I get to share these stories because, for me, it's every little story was a struggle, and every struggle can be related with. And when you can create that connection, emotion drives motion. So
yes.
if I can get you emotionally connected to what we're talking about, I can get you excited to take action on changing the things in your life that will get you the life that you want to live. And that's what I'm here to do. And so, for her, she called me out. She was like, she was interested in me, but I was in my own little lane running, kind of doing my thing. And she's like, hey man, like for clarity, I won't say everything, but she's like, don't be a wuss. Like, come hang out with me. I was like, all right, well, sure. So we hung out, and literally every day since the day we hung out on our first date, we've been together.
Yes. Yes.
And she was the one who saw the potential in me. And there was a lot of times where I made a lot of very selfish decisions
Mhm.
that put her in a position to really have to grind and learn and grow through some experiences that I'm grateful for because they've made us better. And also, I look at and go, thank God she's still there every morning.
Yeah.
Because by golly, I could have lost her multiple times with the stupid shit that I did.
Mhm.
However, God always has a reason and a plan. And, I like to think that we both make each other's lives better. But ultimately, she gave me that motivation to say, you know what? I don't have to do it the way I've always done it.
Mhm.
Like there are other ways to live. There are other ways to think and to grow and to be. And that's what a good spouse does for you. That's what a good partner does is they help you see your strengths and your weaknesses. And
Mhm.
in the places that you're weak, they'll help raise you up. And in the places that you're strong, they'll let you be strong.
Mhm.
but you have to have that open communication. And I'll say first and foremost, like there were a lot of times in my entrepreneurial journey as a quote leader in my family
Yeah.
where I was being very selfish and I was in my tunnel and I was running and I was not looking back to make sure that she and my, son were behind me right there in the draft. I was just doing what I did. And those were the times where I almost lost them, right? That was the time where Christmas Eve, I got my ring back and it was like, hey, man, I love you, but you love your job and your business more than you love your family right now. So you got to make a decision. Are you going to be married to us or are you going to be married to the grind? Because I love you enough to support you either way. But if you want the grind, it's not going to be here with me.
Mm.
And that was, that was a tough conversation to have. And imagine Christmas morning was pretty awkward. But internally, I knew that she was helping me make a better decision about what I wanted out of life. Because as a leader, you can't say one thing and then do another and expect your team to follow you into battle.
Yeah.
And that's what was going on. I was saying, hey, I want this. I'm building this life for us. I'm doing all this for us. But I wasn't actually going back and helping her be in the battle plan and being a part of the mission. It was just me going forward. And so, same thing. She was a muse on my weight loss journey because at one point when our son was born, I, put on the sympathy weight, bro. You eat freaking Thanksgiving turkey dinners 4 weeks in a row. Guess what happens? You get thick, boy.
Right.
After my son was born, I wasn't doing the work. I was settling. I was content. I'm like, you know what? I got the wife. I got the kid. Why do I need to go to the gym and do all the work? I'm making money. Well,
Mm.
guess what? If your wife isn't attracted to you anymore and she's willing to say, hey, listen, I love you, but this ain't doing it for me,
Mhm.
better to her having an open line of communication than to be stepping outside the marriage, right? And
Mm.
that's where I go back to the communication, being willing to have hard conversations.
Right.
That's what's going to change the game, whether it's in your personal relationship or your professional relationships. And
Right.
she's always been one of the first people to tell it like it is.
Yeah, and I mean you're hitting on some real triggers at this point, and I want to make sure men really take that message home. We as men, I get it. We're supposed to be the providers. We're supposed to be the ones going out and getting the money, but you cannot allow yourself to get so married to your job and so tuned in to trying to make money for your family that they start to become an excuse to not be around them. I've heard some men who actually have gone as far as say, look, starts to be the place you rather be than at home. You've got to make sure the communication is there with them because you won't have a foundation to stand on. You won't have anything if you can't go look your wife and your children in the eye and say, I built this. You'll see it in your professional relationships that people won't want to do business with you. Who's really want to buy a high ticket item with someone that can't even look their son and their wife in the eye and say, we are together in this. This is why we're recording this literally in the middle of a Republican National Convention. And what's the first thing you do with all these politicians? What's their wives doing? They have to have that. They have to sell that happy marriage. Now, if they're really happy, that's another conversation for another day. But it's very important that you establish that foundation in the home and humble yourself because again, I kind of put myself in your shoes in your situation. And I know it would have been tough for me to take a job from my wife's father. Like I know that like me mentally as a man, it's like I know that had to be tough for him, especially knowing the pride and knowing that you knew how to sell and you knew how to make money regardless of a job, but you have to humble yourself and say, all right, I'll take the position. And then you did it. I mean, you blew the shit out the water. So, feel free to speak on that whole insurance thing because you did something, you wrote books, you were able to establish a way of getting more leads, even though you didn't have the money. You were able to maneuver in that business in a way that, a lot of people now you're able to coach people on it now. So good.
Yeah, the opportunity to be a part of the insurance agency, like it was a blessing, man. I look at every opportunity that I've had along my journey as a blessing
Mhm.
because when I think about it, when I was getting into the insurance world before that, I was a drug dealer. I was running the streets. I was hustling. I could have very well been doing 5 to 15 years for making freaking 10 and $15 on a transaction, bro. Like that's the thing that people don't think about is like, unless you're moving big weight,
Right.
you're not making real money in the game.
No.
And ultimately, what I learned is that like I have a choice. I can stay and do the same thing I've always been doing, getting the same kind of results I've always been getting, or I can accept that to make a change, you got to change first.
Mm,
And so I took the opportunity with insurance and I said, all right, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to learn what I can. I'm grateful that if I'm going to have to take this job, that I don't have to work weekends and I get to work from like 9 to 5 and I have a pretty awesome office and I'm not out there swinging a hammer or digging a ditch for $10 an hour. Because guess what happens when you get caught doing all the dumb shit that I was doing? You
mm-hmm,
can't get a real job. You got to go and do other things or you become an entrepreneur eventually, but that
mm-hmm.
takes a lot longer to get there usually.
Right.
And so the insurance world, I went in with the idea that's like, man, I know I can sell.
Mm-hmm,
So I'm going to go in and I'm going to sell. And I would just call the damn leads and I would pick up the phone and I would call people and I would try to sell, as much insurance as I possibly could. And I got really good at it. And my main focus was, hey, I have one product. I don't control the prices. I don't control much of it other than you're going to give me the data. I'm going to put it in there. It's going to do its magical calculations and I'm going to tell you how much it costs.
mm-hmm,
You and I both know you need it. Do you want it? That's questionable, but at the end of the day, we know it can also be very beneficial if used correctly and it's within your budget.
mm-hmm,
So my job here is to basically make sure I know all of the things that you care about that you want to protect,
mm-hmm,
show you what products we have available to do so, explain how it works, and then tell you what it costs. You're going to tell me whether or not you want to use it or not. Like, that's kind of how insurance is. It's not the sexiest thing. It's kind of like, you got to have it. You don't really want to deal with it, but you're super grateful that it is there when you're done, using it. But some people never use it, which is why there's an aversion. So it's a weird product to sell. And also, when you're focused on serving and just helping the people, you don't have to worry about it because the whole thing is, hey, what do you have going on in your life?
mm-hmm,
What product services do I have to make sure that if anything did happen to you, you're protected, your family's protected, and you have peace of mind?
mm-hmm,
What is that worth to you, sir, ma'am? Cool. Is it worth $200 a month, $500 a month, 1,000, whatever the number is?
mm-hmm.
That sounds like a good deal to me. Rock and roll. Let's sign on the paperwork and get this done.
Right.
And I just did that for years, 5 years, 5.5 years. And what I did was got to being a top producer in my market
Mm-hmm,
and learning that, hey, if I want to make more than $40,000 a year, I got to go and make more sales. Well, what do I need to do to make more sales? I need to get more leads because if I have more leads, I can
mm-hmm,
have more conversations. And if I have better, more qualified conversations, I'll close more deals. And so I just started the spiral of get better leads, close more sales, make more money, use that money to reinvest to get better leads and keep learning. And it's just this climb up the ladder to where I was at a point where I started a marketing company that, we had developed the skills to say, cool, we can do this for other people on the side. Because as I did it, I started doubling my production. And guess what happened? Other people in the space called and went, hey, Drew, uh, you're like a top guy in the market. You just doubled your production.
mm-hmm.
What are you doing? And is it legal?
Yes.
Because that's how it is, right? It's
Got
like,
to
well, what
click there. And
definitely doing
because,
something sketchy. I already know your story from when you were young, Drew. So you're definitely doing something sketchy now.
right,
It's like,
right, right.
nah, man, I learned marketing,
Yeah.
doing these things on Facebook, these funnels and all this stuff. And they're like, I ain't got time for that shit, but
Right.
I'll pay you to set it up for me.
Mm-hmm.
I made 10 grand in a weekend. I'd never made 10 grand in a month.
Hmm.
And this was that eye-opening moment of, you know what? My time and my skill set is worth what I decide it's worth.
Okay.
And that's where a big part of stepping into leadership is understanding what is your time worth and where are you spending it? Because if you're spending it on things that aren't generating an ROI, technically you're stealing from the things that matter to you, your
Mm-hmm.
family, your business, right? So like if you're doing $10 an hour jobs, but you're responsible for making $1,000 an hour, you're stealing $900 an hour from everything around you that matters.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know if you're not being intentional and you're not paying attention. And so that was one of the things that I learned and what I really start focusing on now from the aspect of a coaching standpoint is I can give you every sales script. I can show you sales funnels. I can give you marketing tactics and techniques that work and have proven systems in place. But guess what? If you don't do the work, if you don't invest the time in the things that are going to get you the result, none of it's going to matter.
Right. So that, yeah, that I'm glad you said that because I've worked a lot of sales jobs myself. I've been in, I mean, name like Aswan, Crookshank. I kind of knew I was going to have to be selling something. I wasn't able to just get a job, given my resume and all that. And what I've learned in the countless experiences that I've encountered when it comes to salespeople is we get a bad rap. We don't get the best of reputations. There's people's sales defense that goes up, even though everything that you do to make money is going to require selling. But again, we won't even start that conversation. How
Hmm.
do you what's the process that you can recommend towards qualifying leads and vetting people out? Because like you said, I can get a list of about 100 numbers, 200 numbers, whatever. There's processes now with the internet, with psychographics, with the ability to know where exactly you want to land. How do you make it so, look, don't waste that hour calling a bunch of people that are just not on the right path, and you hate to be judgmental, but at some point you got to be respectful of your own damn time. How do you advise people to make sure they're qualifying people and vetting people out so they can dial, and they know exactly their target, they know exactly who they're calling, and if it's either a yes or a no, but you know exactly where it is you were going. So
Yeah, it's gonna be a two-part answer because I want to make it very, very clear how this works. One, it starts with your marketing message.
mhm,
If you want to have quality conversations, you need to put out a quality conversation. So what I mean by that is it needs to very specifically speak to one of two things, either helping the individual get out of the pain that they are in currently,
mhm,
right? The pain could be they're paying too much, which means that they don't have enough money to do the other thing that they want out of life, or they're paying for something that's not actually going to get them what they want,
mhm,
or they're sick, or they're whatever, right? Everybody has a pain point, and if you find that pain point, you can make sure to speak to it if you understand what the commonality is among your client base and say, cool, this is what you're dealing with, this is how I help.
mhm,
Very clear messaging is important. The other would be helping someone get the pleasure that they are seeking. And so, again, people buy one of two reasons: they want out of pain or they want into pleasure. And sometimes it's a weird little combination of both, but it's usually one is like way stronger.
mhm,
So the pleasure people is like, hey, you want to go on a cruise, you want to have this experience, you want the nice watch, you want the bag, you want the thing, right? The material, right? That tends to be what people are seeking from a pleasure standpoint. Not always, but most of the time.
right.
So your marketing has to very specifically speak to which of those you are providing for the individual. That's part one to the answer. You tracking with me so far?
Yeah, that's excellent. And I want to make sure I pause you there so the listeners understand that, the pain and pleasure are the two most important, like those are the two driving factors that are going to take somebody to pull their wallet out or pull their checkbook out or whatever and pay. When you talk about pain, it's, look, I just got in a car accident, and if I don't get insurance before this cop arrives, I need to call someone right now and get insurance. Or the pleasure is, again, you may be stuck in a situation where you're in a house and you've you haven't been on vacation for years, and I want to blow it out for the wedding, I want to blow it out for the bachelor party, whatever it is. Really speak to those two things and really think about what you sell and who exactly it is you want to serve. As you're going through pain and pleasure, your avatar becomes very, very crystal clear when you start to really climb, and it's going to take some rejection, it's going to take you going through it, but pain and pleasure is going to be the things that pull you through, because in many ways you're going to think about, how did you get sold, what exactly do you pay for, and if I pay for it, I know for a fact this person's going to pay for it and all that. So that's a very important message to crystallize for the listeners as well. So the second point was
Yeah,
what?
absolutely. No, that's a great point. And the bigger the problem you solve for people, the more they're going to pay you for it.
Mhm.
And so that's always something that I kind of look at is if you're trying to figure out how to make more money, solve bigger problems.
Right.
And again, that starts with understanding your client base, what you actually can provide for them, and how you make it so that it's a no-brainer for them to have a conversation with you. And
Mhm.
so that's where part two of this answer comes in, because I kind of have a process that I use for every conversation that I'm having with someone. I try to run through this process, and it's cliche, but it's the calls process.
Mhm.
And so CALLS, and here's what it stands for. First, C, confirm the reason we're even having a conversation. To me, I don't want to just talk to strangers for no reason. typically it's going in with intentionality. It might just be the intention of helping make this person smile while I'm standing in line at the grocery store, making the whole situation less awkward, right? That could just be the intention, but I'm going to confirm the reason that we're having a conversation. Usually, from a sales standpoint, it's a lead. Someone has given me their name, phone, email. Maybe they reached out on social media through DM, right? They've provided me a contact point
Mhm.
and specifically said they're interested in something, some sort of conversation. So I like to reach out with, hey, this is Drewbie at Call the Damn Leads.
Mhm.
I saw you XYZ, right? You did this thing.
Right, right.
What made you decide to do the thing?
Mm.
And here's the key. This is the $1 million thing I want you guys to hear me.
Right.
And so what made you decide to do this?
Mhm.
And would you prefer to have this conversation in messages or via phone call?
Yes.
Boom.
Excellent.
And here's what's going on. There's two parts to that. Psychologically, getting them to admit that they made the decision to reach out to you. It's not like I'm interrupting your day and I'm bothering you. You reached out to me. So, like, there was intention behind this decision. And getting someone to make a decision is one of the hardest things on the planet to do. So, if you can get them to admit that they've already made one decision, it's easier for them to make the next decision.
Mhm.
So, boom. Now, when it comes to the message or phone question, here's the thing. A lot of people are busy and a lot of people are kind of awkward. So they don't always want to get on the phone unless they have to.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, as a professional and an entrepreneur, if you just reached out to me and were like, hey, can we hop on a call? It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you my calendar link and you're going to have to book some time. And it's probably going to be 7 to 10 days later because I'm busy. And I live by
That's
my
it.
time is important.
Because the brand is called the damn leads, and I want to make sure people understand it's not just over the phone at this point. Now you got so many
Everything.
everything is there to where if you're gonna call someone, there's ways of confirming it. So because I've made this mistake myself, I've spent an hour right here where I'm at, just looking online, calling people, nothing. Right. But I thought, wait, there's ways of reaching out, messaging people. All right, I got a message. Now you call. Don't just look online and think that dial for survival, as they say. But go
Yep.
ahead.
No, that's perfect. And that's the point, though. But I like to give them the decision. Hey, where are we going to have this conversation? Because if I can make you feel more comfortable having the conversation to begin with, it's more likely we're going to go through the entire process. And so once I've gotten you to admit, yes, I made a decision, I'm interested in what you have to talk about, and
Mhm.
I'd like to either speak in messages or on a phone call,
Mhm.
that's when I'll go in and say, fantastic. I've got a couple quick questions I want to ask just to make sure that we're a good fit to work together. All I'm going to ask is that you answer honestly. And if you have any questions for me along the way, stop me, let me know, and I will do the same. Does that sound fair?
Yes.
Because again, we're in sales and people think it's awkward and they're like, well, salespeople are sketchy. So like, man, I'm just gonna ask you a couple quick questions. If we're
Yes.
a good fit together, awesome. I'll tell you what that looks like. If not, I will also tell you because I don't want to waste your time or mine. Is that cool?
Yes,
You know,
and
like,
I want to make sure the
yeah.
listeners understand the tone of this and the understanding, the delicacy and the respect he has for the customer's time. So many of you guys go into it like just for an example, 2 days ago, I was walking to a Publix, there's a grocery store around here in Florida, and they get the guys selling the fundraising stuff. Hey, dog, you trying to buy this? Like just I wanted to like stop. I'm like, Coach, you got to teach a man to like, see, at least ask what I'm buying, at least ask, what I'm looking for in the grocery store. And then, by the way, I have this team. We got this. We're going to be playing here. All these things. Ask questions before you just run up on somebody and ask them to give you money for the fundraiser. But I was like, all right, let me leave that alone. Listen to the Move Swiftly podcast. So, anyway,
That's it, baby. No, and that's the next part though, is I start to ask very specific and
that's the
relevant
A, right?
questions. That's the A. A
Yeah.
is ask specific and relevant questions. And so here's what I know is every sales professional has 3 to 5 questions or 3 to 5 pieces of information they need to know whether or not they can help the other individual.
Mhm.
And so these kind of vary, but it could be like, hey, what's the issue? Why are you interested in looking into this? And you're going to get a one-word answer or you're going to get a life story. And a life story is good because they're going to tell you all kinds of stuff that you can use. A one-word answer, you're like, okay, check that box and move to the next one. So examples could be, with insurance, it's, hey, do you own your home or do you rent your home? How many vehicles do you own?
Mhm.
Are you trying to have, full coverage or just liability? Do you even know the difference? And so you can develop these questions. Or from a contractor standpoint, it's like, hey, do you know if your roof is damaged?
Mhm.
Is there any visible damage? Okay, cool. What's your timeline for this project? When do you want to get started? Do
Right.
you have a budget in place for this project or this service, right? There's all these things that you need to know whether or not they're a good fit to work together. So line those questions out and make sure that you have a process to ask them during every single conversation. Because what's going to happen is as you're asking these questions, you're using the L, which is listening very intently. And I'm going to repeat that, Osman, because people forget this, but you have to listen very intently. Because if you're asking the right questions, they're going to give you everything that you need to know in order to help them solve their problem. And remember what I said earlier, the better the problem you solve, or the bigger the problem you solve, the more they're going to pay you for it.
Mhm.
So as you're listening, you're asking questions, you're listening, and you're going, okay, cool, this makes sense. This makes sense. And then once you've determined A, yes, they're a great fit, and here we need to move into the next step, or B, you know what? This is not a good fit. I need to either refer them to someone else who can help them pass this roadblock in order to make it a good fit, or this is not a good fit, and I need to send them on their way and say, hey, thanks, but do you know anybody else that might be a good fit to work together, even though we're not? And that's a different conversation we'll get to because I've had some of my best referral partners are people that I never did business with personally. It just didn't work out, but they loved my opportunity, so sent others to work with me when it made sense.
Right.
So now we know they're a good fit. Hey, you're telling me everything I need to know. I'm repeating it back to you so that we're on the same page. You're feeling like, yeah, this guy gets me. My next step is L, lay out a plan for success.
Wow.
So I'm going to lay out a plan. All right, cool. From everything that you've told me, sounds like if we can fix XYZ or we can get you into XYZ with, such and such budget or such and such expectations, you'd be happy and ready to move forward. Is that right? And they're going to go, yes. Or this is where you're going to start getting objections. They're going to be like, well, I might need to go a little bit lower on price, or can we get a little bit more of this? Or you're going to have to negotiate, right? That depending on how your conversation goes, you may have to handle objections.
Mhm.
Fantastic. This is when you do that. This is what a sales professional does. You have to handle objections
Mhm.
because the last part, the S, is secure the bag. Because I don't care how great you are at all the other pieces, this is the most important part. If you cannot get them to sign the paperwork, if you cannot get them to pay the down payment to make that transaction real, it's for nothing. And
Yeah.
I've met a lot of really great sales professionals that are great at sales but suck at closing the deal.
Right.
So securing the bag, that's the final part. So I'm going to run through it again real quick. You got
Right.
confirm the reason we're speaking, ask specific and relevant questions, listen, lay out a plan, secure the bag.
Right. Listeners, regular Move Swiftly listeners, if it's your first time tuning in, now you know, but we have just been blessed with another acronym. We have quite a few. There's a whole episode on this feed in which I just talk about the value of acronyms, and we have just been blessed. I'm almost like bored because that's some proprietary shit you just laid out that I feel like is like, yo, that needs to be exclusive to your members and stuff like that. So thank you,
Oh
thank
no,
you,
man.
thank you.
I give it away in my book, brother.
You already
This is
gave
one
it
of those
away. All
things.
right, we
I
already
give it
gave
away in
away
the book,
all the
man. It's
damn
it's
leads.
out there for everybody.
All
That's
right.
it. This is it because I know if we help
Yeah.
more people, man, it's gonna come back. I know that I cannot outgive the universe. So if I give
Yeah.
away the game, it'll come back at some point.
Yeah, and so much of that is about training. I remember my first sales job. I was actually one of the Cutco knife sellers. Like we were selling
Mm,
Cutco knives and all that, and knowing and the
vector marketing.
Oh yeah, that there's just training in itself was crazy, and then going through the process, actually knocking on doors and trying to sell knives, kitchen knives to people completely out of my element. But again, that same process, that same system, all of these things go together. So get out there and go sell something, and then figure out how to maneuver it in a way where you got to believe these things. So, because again, like you said, you can have all the scripts in the world. You could have all the training in the world. If you're not willing to get out there and get roughed up a little bit and be told no, I mean, harsh, angry, just nasty no's, you ain't really built for the game. I'll be 100% honest with you, man. Everybody ain't built for sales. Everybody ain't built to be a business owner. Everybody isn't built for these things because the world does not teach this in school. It doesn't become the norm. You have to have certain things happen to you to even want to do it. And or even in my situation, where you're just gonna be forced into it because no one's hiring an Aswan Crookshank that they see on a resume. All right, I just like you're not just gonna hire that guy unless he knows how to sell. So speak a little bit about some of the ways you were able to overcome some of the rejections because it doesn't matter. I mean, doesn't matter how well you sell. I've known even Andy Frisella talks about this. It doesn't matter how long and how well you do sales, you still going to deal with the rejection and you still have to figure out a way to process it to just move on to the next one. So kind of talk a little bit about how you overcome the rejection that's inevitable.
Well, man, I don't have a crazy name. I got a pretty standard name. Andrew Wilson is real boring. That's why
Right.
I go by Drewbie because it stands out a little bit, right?
Yeah,
I,
so
I
now
was
you
the opposite.
overcome.
I didn't have it. It wasn't too far on the spell. I was like, this is a boring ass name. No, I go by Drewbie.
That's what
But
I
that was
tell
also
people
my
now. It's like it's working to my benefit now because as a seller, you're not going to find another Aswan Cruikshank. Go ahead and look him up, Google him. You're not finding another one. So like what was a detriment as a kid, now it's actually working to my benefit. So yeah, all you people that
that's a
call
whole episode in and of itself. You should make a note
it.
because that's a whole story in itself. But like,
Yes, sir.
for me, when I think about you know, my name separated and stood out. And so with sales, I started at 16, man. I had tattoos on my hands. Like I've been covered since I was a kid. So like a lot of people didn't want to give me a job either. I had tattoos. I had big, inch gauged ears. I was like your typical MySpace emo kid. Like you wouldn't see it now, but
I
I
got to pause.
definitely will.
I got to pause you there. I got to pause you because
Oh gosh.
I'm so happy you said that just yesterday. And again, by the time this recording comes out, it might be old news, but I got into like a serious debate because again, I'm not big into politics, but when I saw the fact that Amber Rose gave a speech, I just wanted to tune in. Like, I don't know what politician is going to have a woman who has a tattoo on her forehead giving a speech in politics. And it turned out to be a really good speech. And I ended up getting into a back and forth with a colleague about you shouldn't listen to people with tattoos. And he's going around telling the kids you shouldn't listen to people with tattoos. And like then the person who runs the school is like, well, you shouldn't listen to people. I'm like, are you, I had to walk away because my ears were, I'm like, what is going on? I got to get back on my show because this is not good the way you judge people. So I'm glad you brought that up because you're right. The minute they see that, all of a sudden we're trained to say, I'm not listening to that dude. He's some thug. Like, oh, well, look at what he's created. Okay, let's go. So I wanted to make sure I made that point for you.
No, I appreciate that. And that's true though. Like one of the things is people are very quick to judge a book by its cover, right? And I don't blame them because I'm the same way. I do snap judgments based on what I see. That's how we are trained as humans. Like what we see is what we initially believe, and it's not until we dig a little bit deeper
Yeah.
that we truly get a sense of what we want or what matters. And it's the same thing in sales,
Mhm.
right? If you just look at the surface, you might look at somebody and say, man, you're broke. You ain't got no money, but they might be the richest dude in the town, but it's a farmer and he doesn't buy fancy clothes because that's not what's important to him.
Exactly.
And so when
1000%.
you're thinking about success
Mhm.
for yourself, it's a perspective.
Mhm.
What happens though is so many people get caught up chasing the social media hype, the Instagram, the gurus, those guys that have done all of these things and made all this money. And hey, kudos to them for doing what they had to do to get the life that they want. But guess what? I've met a lot of those guys. I've walked around with a lot of those guys behind closed doors. They're
Exactly.
not always who they say they are. And even if they are 99% of it, there are still things that in their life they're not happy about, that they're not successful in. And so you can't let someone else's version of it
Mhm.
detract you from creating yours. You can be inspired, you can be motivated, you can use it as a stepping stone to be like, hey, somebody's already done the thing that I want to do. So I don't have to figure it out. That's fucking awesome, right? I don't have to figure out how to fly to the moon. I don't have to figure out how to do these things. Somebody already did. So
Yeah.
I can then fast forward and get more done and get to a cooler, newer version of my life that I didn't even realize was possible. But the problem is, so many people are chasing what someone else has already done. Man, I would love to be able to do what they did. I'd love to be able to do what they did. Well, okay, cool. But like, what else do you want to do?
Right.
And why do you want to do it? Because is it going to make you feel good or do you think it's going to make other people think you're cool?
Right.
And that's a weird balance of life of being like, are you doing it for you because you feel good about it? Or are you doing it because it makes other people think or feel a certain way about you?
Right.
And I'm here to remind you again, success is a perspective. What I see as my version of success, Aslan, is very different than what you see as your version.
Yes.
And if we asked our parents about what they thought our life would be like if it was successful, it's going to be totally different than what we're doing right now. I promise you that.
Right. Right.
So when you're sitting down at the end of the night and you're writing in your journal, or you're sitting there in the dark and you're looking at the ceiling wondering why you're not feeling more fulfillment,
Mhm.
what are you doing? Are you doing things that make you feel good, or are you doing things that you think make other people feel good
Yes.
about you or who you are? And
Yes.
and it's so hard to dig into that, but man, I promise you, when you have those hard conversations with yourself and you're willing to be like, you know what? I like crazy colored banana shirts, and I like being me and having meme lord tattooed on my hands, and I like that. That's who I am. I like smoking meat and hanging out with my wife and traveling around. So guess what? That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, there's enough people out there that think that what I'm doing is kind of cool and interesting enough that they follow my story. And
Right.
some of those people want to know how I've been able to build a life to where I can live like this. And so, guess what? I help them solve that problem for them. I help them figure out what areas of their life they need to change or focus on in order to be happier, to have what they want. And they pay me for it. And that's the beautiful thing about sales and consulting and life in general is if you can help people solve problems, they will pay you to do so, because you know what? Money is the one tool that we all know how to go make more of.
Mhm.
And the more money we have, the less shit we have to. There's a quote. What is it? It's uh the more bread you have in life, the less shit you eat in a shit sandwich.
Yeah.
Guess what? Money's that bread, right? Go make that bread. Do what you got to do. But you know what? Use it as a tool, use it as a resource to buy back your time, because when you have more time, you can make multiples of that money.
Mhm.
But it's not until you start being intentional about what your time is worth, where you're spending it, and what the ROI is, that you can really make a difference.
Yeah, and it's also very important to mention too that the majority of people don't think like that. So if you're listening to us now, you gotta see the rejection,
It's a shift.
yeah, the positive aspect. If you're being rejected by something you're selling, that means you're actually doing the right thing, because so many people are moving in that direction. And then you gotta, again, don't be angry about it. Figure out how you can help. Figure out exactly what you're doing wrong. Take some accountability. That most of the people who just say no, they don't want to take accountability. They don't want to take any responsibility. They're just looking for somebody to blame. So kind of give yourself a pat on the back and say, I'm not one of them people, and I'm just going rub some dirt on it, get up the next day and sell it again. So that being said, I want to make sure we get into your weight loss journey as well, because one of the I work out every morning. One of the things I do when I work out, with the way it helps me, is it helps me process the days. It helps me process the rejection. It helps me process my business plan, process who I'm going to talk to. I listen to, potential guests. All that stuff is just process things. So speak on how that weight loss journey was able to correlate into your successful business that you're doing now.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been a journey, and it's a daily journey. I'm
Yeah.
going to just say right up front that I deal with body dysmorphia. At 315 pounds, when I looked at myself in the mirror, I wasn't happy. When I got down to 183 pounds at my lowest, when I was, like 34, 35, guess what? I wasn't happy,
Hmm.
because I wasn't feeling who I wanted to be. I was chasing a
Oh,
number, I was chasing some arbitrary thing. And when I got there, guess what? It didn't fill the void.
oh,
And so my journey, I grew up a husky kid. I was always fat. I was that kid that got made fun of in high school, and I didn't always get the girls because I wasn't really confident in myself. And so I always dealt with that insecurity. And at a certain point, I got up to about 315 pounds at my biggest. And I will never forget looking at the scale and being like, whoa, dude, like, what is going on?
hmm.
And so I stopped drinking soda, because I was drinking 8 to 10 Cokes a day and eating, a large pizza and freaking two Chipotle burritos. Like, I just wasn't being mindful of my portion size. So I was just doing what I wanted to do to make me feel full. And
Right.
interesting how we chase that dopamine, that feeling of fullness,
Yeah.
and how we get it. Some people turn to drugs, some people turn to food, porn, whatever your addiction is. Like, we chase that fullness, that feeling.
Yeah.
And so I got rid of the sugary drinks. I got rid of all of that. Ended up getting into a new job. And of course, that was when I got back into some of my older ways of selling things and doing things that weren't really on the up and up. And I got down to like 215 pounds. But when you're popping mollies and running around drinking and acting a fool and not eating for days on end, well, guess what? You lose the weight. So I was skinny, but I was unhealthy. And you've all seen an addict who was big that got skinny, and you're like,
Oh, okay.
I don't know about all that, right? You know exactly what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah.
And so when I met my wife and she got my head kind of screwed back on straight, and I stopped doing all the stupid things that I was doing for so many years before we met, and started, going on dates and having a couple of desserts here and there, and then having a late night snack, and then, she got pregnant. And ultimately what happened is that I put that weight back on. I got back up to like 285 pounds when my son was born,
Hmm.
and realized, like, shit, I don't want to be the dad who's at the park wheezing on the bench after 5 minutes because I don't take care of myself. And one of my good friends, as I was on my journey and started making a little more money, he came to me and he's like, "Hey, bro, like, I'm proud of you. You're crushing it. You're breaking six figures, and your wife doesn't have to work anymore, and you're doing all these
Mhm.
things, but like, looking a little soft, dog. It's like, how's it gonna feel if you blink, and all of a sudden you're up in heaven looking down, and there's
Oh,
some other asshole in bed with your wife in
oh,
your house,
oh,
raising your kid with all your money in the bank."
oh, no, you don't say that to a salesman. You don't say that to you don't
And
say
I'm like, hold on, bro, that's not heaven. Wait, hold on a second. That doesn't sound like heaven at all.
right.
And he's
Right.
like, well, here's the deal, man, because you're doing all these other things, but you ain't taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And that hurt, right? And it's like kind of that, fuck you, dog. You don't know me like that. But he
That's what
did.
I'm saying.
And he was just being
It's
honest.
necessary though. It is necessary. You need people like that in your life. You need people like
You
so,
need people
people
like
like
that in your life. Shout
right.
out to my boy Jeff for hitting me with that one. And so
Yeah.
it was like, okay, cool. I'm going to get back on my journey. And I did 75 hard, and I've done countless other, mindset trainings and programs. And at the end of the day, everything that I've learned comes back to this point exactly. Do the work. Every day you're blessed with 24 hours. What are you doing in that 24 hours? If you want a result, there are simple steps to take to get the result. They're not always fun. They're not always sexy. A lot of times they're not the thing that you want to be doing, but they're the thing you need to be doing to get the result that you're looking for.
Mhm.
And so that's what I did. And again, I got down to, 183 pounds. I was freaking thin, boy. I was ready to rip. But
Yeah.
when I looked in the mirror, I was like, this ain't it. Like,
Mhm.
I'm now. And so now I float somewhere between like 2 and 215, depending on how many tacos and margaritas we have that week.
Right.
But
But it's
ultimately I'm happy
yeah.
because I know that when I look in the mirror, I feel good. And that's only thing that matters is that feeling good, because that feeling good, that confidence, it transpires in every area of your life, personally and professionally.
Yes, yes. And well, first of all, Andy Frisella, if you're listening, again, shout out to you because this is about the what sixth or seventh time that 75 hard has been mentioned. I myself is in the middle of it right now.
Come
So
on, baby.
yeah, the thing is, we're doing this in 2024, but I went a whole year sober in 2023. And then I met this girl who told me that she wanted to do it. And I'm like, 75 days isn't shit without alcohol for me because I just went a whole year sober. But she
Come on.
dropped off and kind of turned me off. So I didn't really communicate with her. But it was a filtering out. And then it was someone who was on this show who told me that she did it twice. So again, Eddie Vasella, I don't know what I mean. I just tuned into it because your name came up in a conversation. But again, this 75 hard thing, it's been on the Move Swiftly podcast quite a bit. So with all that, I want to make sure I make the point too, guys, is just losing the weight is not going to necessarily make you happy. It's a mental framework. It's a mindset. It's a mindset that you have to take in every phase of your life because these things correlate in so many different ways. And I do want to be very respectful of your time, Drewbie. Can you just speak on how you serve people now? What's Call the Damn Lead's going to be looking like, in the next 5, 10 years? What's your vision for the company, and where do you see it going, and how can people get in touch with you?
My big vision is that, we're 2024 right now. It's July of 24. So my vision is that by July of 29, so that's 5 years from now, you won't walk through an airport or a sales event and not see Call the Damn Leads somewhere.
Hmm.
And so what we do is really three parts, I always say. One, the forefront is the e-commerce brand, keychains, hats, tchotchkes, little reminders for you and for your team, for little giveaways. Because here's the thing, man, we all know what we're supposed to be doing, but it doesn't hurt to have that little fun reminder. And, I like to believe that call the damn leads. If you've been in sales or you've been in business, you know what it means. And it's just a fun little reminder. So my goal is to put a keychain or a wristband on, a few 100,000 people so that at any point in the next 5 years, you'll see someone walking through an airport or a event with one on. And the reason is because I know that if we can do that, it's ultimately going to have created an army of people who are creating their own success.
Mhm.
That's what I want. I want you to hear what I have to say. I want you to take some wisdom, knowledge, training, whatever,
Mhm.
implement it in your life and know that you're living a life that makes you proud. Because if you're doing that, you're helping more people. And that's a multiplier, right? That's the butterfly flap effect of
Yeah.
what we can do as an individual by helping other people around us. And so to do on top of that, there's a couple things I think that are really important in business. One, if you don't have a CRM, if you don't have a system and a process where you're keeping all of your data, all of your clients, your leads organized, and you're helping your team implement it to be more efficient and more successful, you're like the Joker in that movie where he's burning that big pile of cash, right? I have a funny meme that I share about that, but like that's the truth. If you don't have a system like that, you're burning money, you're wasting time, and I can help you build something like that. So we have a CRM software that we implement for business owners and entrepreneurs. And then above and beyond that, personal coaching and accountability. I've
Mhm.
worked with somewhere around 3,000 or so business owners and entrepreneurs in the last 5 years alone, helping them generate anywhere from 6 to 7, sometimes 8 figures in business. And
Mhm.
that's just us having real conversations about what they're doing in their personal and professional life to help them get dialed in to create sustainable success. Because
Mhm.
again, man, we've seen all the people that go really high, really fast, but it doesn't last very long. I don't want that to happen to you. I want you to build a life that you can wake up every single day that you're blessed to open your eyes on this beautiful planet and know that you're going to have an awesome day, that you're going to crush the day before it crushes you, and that you're going to have done it because you called the damn leads.
Right. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Is it LinkedIn or Facebook or
I
what?
spend the majority of my time on Facebook, but I promise you, if you just go to Google and type call the damn leads,
All the
whatever platform you like to hang out on, whether you prefer Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, I have content on every single platform that goes out every single day because I know it's not about me. It's about what you want, what you like, and me being in a position to help you achieve that. So if you want to know more, you want to find me, go to callthedamnleads.com. All of our socials are on there. Everything's out there that you can find. We have free trainings, we have podcasts, we have gifts, we have all kinds of cool stuff. But the only thing that you should do first, if you got value out of the show, you need to go share it on social media and tag Aswan and myself. Let people know that you got something from this. This is where it all started. So go out, share this on social media, tell someone about it, send it to your friend, family member, whoever that needs to hear it so that we can get this message in front of them because today this is a message that matters.
Yeah, and as I promised you, listeners, you were going to be fired up. Right now, I feel like I'm in the Wolf of Wall Street. Jordan Belfort just gave the speech. You're tired of pick up the phone and start dialing. Fine. You're tired of your car. Pick up the phone and start dialing. I've watched that. Man, I watched that. I watch it sometimes just to get a rush sometimes before I start working out. So,
Come on.
with all that, Drewbie, the way I close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are in high school. You're getting made fun of about your weight. You're selling things that are illegal. You're doing all the things that you were in high school. Pretend that version of Drewbie has come into the Zoom room. Give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close with that.
Trust the process.
Mhm.
That's always the same. Anytime anyone asks me, like, what advice do you give your younger self? It's trust the process
That's the
because the
process.
process gets the results. And the
Yes,
problem
sir.
is, most people will abandon the process before they've gotten the results. So if you trust the process, you'll get the result.
Yes, sir. And again, listeners, this has been a common answer to that question. You guys hear it every single episode. I ask that same question to close out, and it's been a common trust the process. In some way, shape, form, or fashion, people have looked back at their former self and said, it's okay. Trust the process. Everything is happening for you, not to you, to give you the leverage, to give you the edge, to give you whatever it is you're going to need for those hard days, because the hard days are coming. They're coming. They're coming. All right. You're going to be ready for them, though. So, all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.